Hi guys, so my good Brexit friend, Andre Walker, uploaded a video recently about Scottish independence and how Nicola Sturgeon risks a Scottish breakup. So let's hear what he had to say.
Nicola Sturgeon's power grab risks the breakup of Scotland as Orkney and Shetland threaten to leave the country. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Yes, I suppose it was inevitable as we talk about the idea of another Scottish referendum, a second referendum, and indeed a third, a fourth.
Okay, there isn't going to be a second, third, fourth, whatever. And also, just for a moment, why does a Brexiteer have a problem with someone having a referendum? That's lost on me. But anyway, let's park that for a moment. So in 2014, Scotland had an independence referendum. They had a yes campaign and a no campaign, and the no campaign won. Scotland did not become independent. It lost that vote. The independence vote lost, so it remains part of the UK. Now, at that time in 2014, a lot of young people wanted to vote. Now, I'm not saying which way they wanted to vote. Some of them wanted to vote to be independent. Some of them wanted to support the union. And at the same time, older people were allowed to vote, and they were able to vote. Now, the problem with the 2014 is that those young people were not able to vote, not able to have a voice, but the older people were. And those older people, I'm sorry to say, are no longer with us. But the impact of their vote still impacts the lives of the younger people who did not have a voice. Now, that to me doesn't seem very fair or democratic. I think it would make sense for Scotland to have another referendum. Times have changed since 2014. The demographics have changed since 2014. So the people of Scotland should be given another vote. Now, you're probably saying, well, you just want Scotland to become independent and get out of the UK. Let me explain something. If Scotland becomes independent and after a number of years says, look, we're tired of this, this hasn't worked out, it's been a disaster, we would like to have another referendum in Scotland on rejoining the United Kingdom. Now, I would actually support that referendum. Now, I'm not saying I would support rejoining the UK, but I would support the Scottish people in having a referendum. Now, I support people having a vote. Andre doesn't seem to support that, and he's the Brexiteer.
Fifth, that's it. A referendum in order to pull Scotland out of the United Kingdom. I suppose it was inevitable that other parts of Scotland would talk about leaving that country. Because, of course, there are wealthy, smaller islands, some of them entitled to oil that...
I don't know if, for example, Shetland and Orkney are entitled to oil. I don't see it written anywhere that they're entitled to oil. You're just assuming this. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my criticism of Andre here is wrong. But I haven't seen any documentation to support the fact that Orkney and Shetland have claims to oil and that they would be supported. There's one thing is to say that we want the oil. Another thing is actually being able to present legal documents to support that. But maybe my criticism is misplaced.
Are not so sure that they should be governed by an independent Edinburgh. In fact...
So why do you think Shetland and Orkney would not want to be governed by an independent Scotland? I think it's because they would... Actually, their request is nothing to do with oil. It's they want to be converted into tax havens. They want to be... Because they don't have any great resources available. They want to be similar to Jersey, for example. They want to be tax havens. Now, if there is an independent Scotland, I'm sure an independent Scotland would say, no, you're not going to become a tax haven. Under the UK, there's a chance for them to become tax havens, like Jersey, for example. But in an independent Scotland, they would not have this permission. But maybe I'm also mistaken here. Maybe they could actually ask for it, but I don't think an independent Scotland would be supportive, at least, of that. And they would be right. What are the benefits to ordinary people in the country of a tax haven? Tax havens should not exist.
Orkney and Shetland are now talking about becoming crown dependencies, which would make them similar to Jersey and Guernsey. Well, of course, you might be asking yourself, where on earth does this end? And actually, am I not a bit of a hypocrite for wanting
Yes, you are.
to leave the European Union, but wanting to stay within the United Kingdom? Well, actually, I think there's an important principle here.
He doesn't actually say I'm not a hypocrite. But you are a hypocrite if you say Scotland shouldn't be allowed to have a referendum to leave and the UK should. Let's just take a step back here and imagine a parallel universe where Juncker, Jean-Claude Juncker, said to the UK government in 2016, you had your referendum, we're not acknowledging it. You can't leave. So just shut up and sit down. Or sit down and shut up. In the same way that they're treating Scotland, the UK government is treating Scotland at the moment. Would Brexiteers just say, oh, okay, well, the EU said that we can't leave, then we just have to sit down and shut up? No, they would not. Would Nigel Farage just scuttle away under that rock that he came out from? No, he wouldn't. So why should Scotland just sit down and shut up? Because people in England say, well, you need to sit down and shut up.
Look, we've seen with the hate crime bill being pushed through in Scotland, there's a link in the description.
So what has the hate crime bill got to do with independence? I'd like to see the connection between a bill that Nicola Sturgeon brought in and Scottish independence.
By the way, about how Nicola Sturgeon wants to jail J.K. Rowling.
Nicola Sturgeon wants to jail J.K. Rowling, really? That's a vast oversimplification of the hate crime bill. It's like, yeah, you can make it fit anything you want if you look at it in a particular way.
We've seen how ridiculous laws will be passed by these countries, and how, of course, Nicola Sturgeon simply wants to gerrymander. She wants to put...
Please don't use words that you don't understand. You don't understand the meaning of gerrymander. Isn't it ironic that he's talking about gerrymandering when his government uses probably the least democratic system, first past the post, in the world to elect its lawmakers?
Through a hardline socialist agenda in Scotland, but she's worried she can't do that as...
I'm sorry to be interrupting him every second, but there's so much to reply to here. So it's a hardline socialist agenda. So one of the things that the Scottish government want to do is to extend the furlough scheme to help people. So Boris Johnson brought in the furlough scheme in England, and they're cutting it off in October. So Boris Johnson is a socialist, but Nicola Sturgeon is a hardline socialist. Is that right? Am I understanding this correctly?
Part of the United Kingdom. You know what? She's not a particularly big Scottish patriot. You don't see her hanging around in tartan or eating haggis or swilling back whiskey.
Okay. I have a few things to say about this. So I actually went to Google and I put in Nicola Sturgeon tartan. And look what I found. Now, maybe you said, well, that's just a mask. Okay. But then I put it a little bit further and I put in shoes. And I said, okay, she even has freaking tartan shoes. She has a mask, a tartan mask, a tartan jacket, a tartan shoes. Like, what is she missing? A tartan hairstyle? And then you say about, well, she doesn't eat haggis, or we haven't seen her eat haggis. Well, you do understand that there are vegetarian and vegans in Scotland who don't eat haggis. Does that mean that those people are not true Scots? Or Scottish patriots, as you were going to say? I would say true Scots. And You don't see her drinking whiskey. Well, maybe she's teetotal, or maybe we just haven't seen her drink whiskey. Does that mean that people who don't drink whiskey in Scotland are not true Scots? Look, I'm starting to think that this is actually a parody channel. This is all satire. Because what he has invoked here is a fallacy called the no true Scotsman fallacy. Really, I recommend you look at it, find some examples on YouTube or on Google. It's hilarious. So he's basically saying Nicola Sturgeon isn't a true Scot because we haven't seen her wear a tartan. Well, she does. We haven't seen her eat a haggis. Maybe she's vegetarian. And we haven't seen her drink whiskey. Maybe she's teetotal. And because of those things, she's not a true Scot. This is hilarious.
Her point is, she needs to make Scotland independent to push through a hardline socialist agenda. Now,
once again, this hardline socialist agenda, she cares about people. She wouldn't follow the same rules for the lockdown that Boris Johnson put in place because she cared about people. She put people before businesses. I'm sorry, that makes her a socialist. But some of the policies she has put in place are similar to what Rishi Sunak put in. So are you saying that Rishi Sunak is also a socialist from when we look at it from an economic point of view?
Now I say that political structures should be built based on shared traditions and shared history.
So let me take a step here. I have to respond to this as well. I'm sorry I'm interrupting him every few seconds. So he said that political structures should be based on shared history and shared cultures. Okay, but shared history. So are you saying that the UK and Ireland, the UK and India, the UK and the United States should have similar political structures because they have shared history? Japan and China have a shared history. Does that mean that they should have the same political structures? I'm not trying to be obtuse here. I'm trying to understand what he's saying. And then he says shared cultures. But Scottish culture and English culture are very different. Yes, of course, there are some things that are the same. They speak the same language. But of course, in the United States, they speak the same language as the UK. In Ireland, they speak the same language as the UK. Australia speaks the same language as the UK. But you wouldn't say that they should have the same political structures. I would actually prefer not a political structure based on shared history, whatever the hell that means, or shared cultures. I would prefer a political system based on consent and consensus. We vote, we have a system that is representative of all the people in the country, or as many people as possible. I would prefer that political system, not something connected with the past.
So the United Kingdom is an obvious thing to do. But if all you're interested in is power, then actually you can make up whatever country or whatever territory you want. You can have a European Union in the way that Nicola Sturgeon wants. You can say that you believe in Scottish independence, but still want to be part of the EU. That would make sense.
So maybe I misunderstood something he said here. That that Scotland can be independent and still part of the EU. I thought you couldn't be independent and part of the EU. I thought the whole reason for Brexit was to become independent and not be part of the EU.
But also it equally makes sense for places like Orkney and Shetland to say that they want to be independent from Scotland. Because if there's not going to be a United Kingdom...
They're not independent. They're not going to be independent countries. You don't seem to understand the difference between an independent Scotland and the status, whatever status it would be given to Orkney and Shetland. They would not be independent countries. In the same way that Jersey is not an independent country. The same way the Isle of Man is not an independent country. Scotland would be an independent country. It's not the same. I don't know why you're confusing these things.
If there's not going to be a shared history and a shared culture, then why on earth should you simply take a diktat from what is effectively a made-up country? Now,
so Scotland is a made-up country.
You're about to be a little critical when I say Scotland's
I'm not Scottish and I'm offended.
a made-up country. I don't mean that. I mean that the purpose...
Then why did you say it? You know, you could have said, crap, I made a mistake in this video. Just throw it in the bin. I'll do a new one. But no.
...of its independence is simply gerrymandering. If you put...
So Scottish independence is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering against what? Do you know, gerrymandering is an internal political tool. So you're saying that the SNP are gerrymandering away the Conservatives' power in Scotland, or the Labour Party's power in Scotland? I'd like you to give an explanation or some examples of how the SNP or Nicola Sturgeon is gerrymandering. You just seem to be saying gerrymandering is independence, or independence is gerrymandering, but that doesn't make any sense.
Push away your identity and simply believe in political power structures, then actually you're playing an incredibly dangerous game. The United Kingdom has been a hugely successful political partnership. Boris Johnson said it was the most successful political partnership.
So if Boris Johnson says something, it's true. We have another fallacy by, what is it, the fallacy of, might makes right, or, fallacy from authority. Oh, well, if Boris Johnson says it, then it must be true.
In the history of the world, that's probably right. To break it up just because of your own socialist ideals is a genuinely dangerous and stupid thing to do. Not least because, I think it was, up until the 1950s, Scotland voted Conservative. Political tastes can change.
So because people in the 1950s voted for the Conservatives, that means that Scotland should be stuck in the 1950s. Scotland shouldn't move on. Like, you're actually destroying your own argument here by saying tastes change. Yes, people used to vote for the Conservative Party in Scotland in the 1950s, and now in the 2020s they're voting for the SNP. So times have changed. Should Scotland be forced to stay in the 1950s? Why?
And simply creating a country for the purposes of pushing through your own political agenda.
You seem to think that Scottish independence appeared like yesterday or something. Scottish independence has been around a lot longer than Nicola Sturgeon. The SNP itself did not look the way the SNP look today. The party evolved. The party was on the centre right, and in the past. Some will even say that it was on the hard right. But it's no longer the case. It has changed. It has evolved. But you seem to think that this, the SNP or independence has just sprung up in the last 6 months or something. An independent Scotland has been in the running for a long time now. And it predates people like Nicola Sturgeon and her quote-unquote socialist ideals. This was quite painful, and it's probably more painful for you to listen to it. But that's all I have to say. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?